Good afternoon. Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Political Talk Show. Today is Saturday, October the 1st, 2016. Boy, what a week we just had. First of all, the election takes place on November the 8th. But this week, really the election was really decided this week. It was, let's just put it this way. This is the week where, for all intended purposes, the thought of presidency just really came to an end for one particular candidate. Let me explain. Usually in presidential elections, you'll know before November 8th who's most likely going to win. And usually, elections are not won and lost on the third Tuesday or the first Tuesday in November, because actually it was the first Tuesday in November of an election cycle. So usually you know ahead of time why a candidate wins or loses. This week was the week we found out why a particular candidate will lose this election. And let me explain. On September the 26th, that's a Monday, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton faced off in the first presidential debate in the general election for this election cycle. It was watched by over 80 million people, which was the highest rated debate, most watched debate in the history of, since they've been tracking this, of politics. And basically, 80 million people saw. Now, 80 million people may not admit to it, but 80 million people ended up seeing a meltdown by a particular candidate by the name of Donald J. Trump. His performance was historically bad. And why this is significant, and I hear other, pundits and analysts say, well, Bush had a bad first debate against John Kerry. Obama had a bad first debate against Mitt Romney. But, so this gives Trump some hope. All he needs to do is prepare well for the second debate. Here's the big difference between those two gentlemen, Bush and Obama and Trump. Number one, Bush and Obama already held the office of presidency of the United States. Okay? So that means they were already knowledgeable about the issues. Number two, they both had leads going into those debates against their opponent. And that's significant. Because when you have a lead, you are afforded a bad debate or two. Where if you don't have the lead, you're not afforded those. And number three, the one thing that they both were somewhat popular going into their re-election campaign or into this debate. They were somewhat popular, especially Obama. Obama was very popular, more so than Bush. But he was very popular. So when people like you, they'll tend to be much more forgiving than when they don't like you. These two candidates, Hillary and Trump, are the two most unpopular candidates of all time. Okay? But why this matters for Trump is, number one, Trump doesn't currently hold the office for the presidency of the United States. He's running for the office. Number two, he's trailing Clinton. He's trailing in the polls, unlike the two gentlemen I mentioned before, Bush and Obama. Trump is trailing in the polls, and that matters. Because instead of losing ground when you have a lead, you're losing ground when you're trailing. That's a big difference. And number three, the people don't like these guys, particularly Trump. The people don't like him. He is the most unpopular candidate of all time. And that's saying something. Of all time, he's the most unpopular candidate. when Hillary Clinton mentioned Alicia Machado. Now, she was a former beauty pageant winner in one of Trump's pageantries. Okay? He called her Miss Piggy, Miss House Cleaner. Some very derogatory terms. And when Clinton brought this up in the debate, how did you find her? How did you find her? He was rude, bombastic, condescending. But worse than that, he has no knowledge of the issues. And that's what made his debate performance bad. And so he's going to pay a price for that. He was going to slide in the polls for that, and the polls came out and showed that, yes, he lost some ground. He lost about 3 to 5 points, in the polls, depending on which poll you're looking at. He lost anywhere from 3 to 5 points because of that debate performance or corporate debate performance. So that means where he was close, because remember, going into the debate, the media said the polls are tightening, But here's what they didn't tell you. He was still trailing in these polls, with the exception of some minor polls here or there, some undiscredited polls here or there. He was still trailing. Hillary Clinton still had a 1 to 2 point lead, an average of 2 points. She was leading by an average of 2 points going into Monday. Now she's leading by an average of 5 to 6 points going into Monday. 5 points going into Monday. Going into this upcoming week. So he lost on average 3 points. Now, why is this significant? Because do you know how much it takes to make up a 3-point deficit? When you're already trailing by another 2 more points? So that means she's got a 5-point lead on him. And folks, we are in the 4th quarter of this political game here. So that's the equivalent of being up 2 touchdowns with about 2 minutes to go. Being down 2 touchdowns with about 2 minutes to go. Time is no longer on your side. So he's now down an average of 5 points. But here's the problem. It's what took place later on this week, where basically why I say his candidacy is over. Because he's going to pay a price for this. And what am I talking about? See, okay, let me set this up for you. I was talking to a friend of mine on Thursday night about an event or an announcement that came out earlier that day. And that is that Trump violated the U.S.-Cuba embargo agreement. Meaning basically, because the U.S. didn't want nobody in the U.S. Our laws are set up that nobody in the U.S. could do business in Cuba. This is important to know, okay? You couldn't do business in Cuba. You can't even spend a cent, not 1 penny in Cuba. If you spent 1 cent, even buying a 1 cent candy in Cuba, you are breaking U.S. laws. That's a federal crime. You can go to jail for that. Keep that part in mind. Okay? A report came out by Kurt Eisenwald, a Newsweek reporter, that showed back in 1998, while this embargo was in effect, that Trump gave some consultant or paid a bill for over $86,000 for some business in Cuba. That right there was illegal. Now, why is this important? Because it's past the statute of limitations, so they technically, legally cannot do anything to him. But why is this important? Folks, Florida, for Trump, is a must-win state, because you do realize to win the presidency of the United States, it's not about the popular vote, okay? It's about getting to 270, the electoral college. That's how we elect our presidents, by electoral colleges. And each state has what they call an electoral college vote. So you got some from as low as 3 to as high as, 30? So why this is important? Florida. Florida is considered a must-win for Donald Trump. Because, see, under the old map, or the old way of doing things, before 2008, Trump would have actually had a better than 50-50 chance of becoming the next president of the United States. Because why? The Democrats and the Republicans pretty much had it wasn't a written agreement, it wasn't even a verbal agreement, it was just an agreement. Sort of a handshake agreement. You stay on your side, we stay on ours. Which means you win your traditional states, we win ours, and we just fight for Ohio and Florida. That's how the two-party system worked for decades. Okay? It was really, the election always came down to Ohio and Florida. That's just the way it's been. Then Obama came in and pretty much threw a hand grenade into that, saying, nope, I'm going to compete for more states. And Hillary Clinton should be thanking her lucky stars that this is the case. Because why? By Obama expanding the political map, he made it easier for Clinton to win. See, Clinton has many more paths to the White House. Clinton can lose Ohio and Florida and still win the White House. While the Republicans don't have that same luxury. Because the Republicans, unfortunately for them, are shrinking in numbers. This is a political fact, folks. Look it up. They're shrinking in numbers. They're not growing in numbers, they're shrinking. And they're losing states. And I suspect, this is a little side issue, but I suspect that in the next election cycle or two, Georgia will be a purple state, followed by Texas. I suspect that. But that's not, forget about that because that's not part of the conversation here. But here's why him breaking that Cuba embargo agreement kills him. Florida has the highest percentage of Cuban Americans. Outside of New York, but yes, the highest percentage of Cuban Americans. Down there, especially what they call it, Little Havana, down there in Miami-Dade County. Or as they say in basketball, with the Heat, Miami-Wade County, but it's really Miami-Dade County. I'll just, throwing that in there. But the problem is this. Let's go back a couple of years. A manager who was the manager of the White Sox, and I believe he also became the manager of the Miami Marlins, he made a very controversial comment. He said, Fidel Castro is not a bad man. That basically ended his career as a manager. Because the Cuban Americans took that as an affront and an insult. They hate Castro down there with a passion. Okay? That's very disturbing to them if you mention anything about Castro in a positive light. Okay? They hate him, literally with a passion. That's the important part to remember. Now, keep this in mind. While Trump, the next year, 1999, who was running under the Reform Party for the presidency of the United States. See, I didn't realize this, but Trump ran for president once before, but under the Reform Party. Didn't end up going far. But he gave a speech there to the Cuban American group saying how Castro is a murderer, a bad man, this, that, and the other, boom, 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 and the only way you do business is when he is out of power, when his regime falls. But what the people didn't know was that the prior year, he was trying to set it up to do business with the same bad man, the same murderer. This is bad. And when Trump and his people tried to deny it, Mr. Wild, came with the evidence, saying, boom, here's the evidence. And then Kelly Conway, who was Trump's campaign manager, went on The View and for some inexplicable reason answered it honestly when she was asked. Did Trump or his company give money in Cuba? She said yes. She admitted that her client, the person who she works for, broke the law. That's an admission of guilt, folks. Now, this is a problem because you cannot win Florida as a Republican without the Cuban vote. There's not enough votes out there in Florida for the Republicans to win because they're the biggest voting bloc of Republicans in Florida. They are the biggest voting bloc for Republicans in Florida. Okay? Obama didn't necessarily win their vote, but what he did is he peeled off over 40% of their vote. That's how he was able to get Florida, and he barely won by, what was it, 0.5% or something like that, 1%. It was a small margin of victory for Obama. Because why? He got over 40% of the Cuban vote. If he didn't, he wouldn't have won Florida. He would have still been president of the United States, but he wouldn't have won Florida. Romney would have carried Florida. So that tells you how important the Cuban vote is. And they are livid behind this news that Trump was doing business or trying to do business with Castro while he stood up there and pretended otherwise. This, folks, is a deal breaker because, see, Trump was only leading by, 6 to 7 points with Cubans against Hillary to begin with. That's why Florida is competitive. I suspect he's either going to barely break even or he's going to lose the Cuban vote behind this. I think this is, as they say, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Because if Trump cannot get Florida, and I want you to hear me clearly, folks, I don't care what you think of Hillary. I don't care what you think of Trump. I don't even care what you think of me. I'm just going to give you the facts. If Trump cannot win Florida, there is no path. Nada, zilch, however you say no in whatever language you want to use, there is no path to the White House, to 270 in the White House for the Republicans, but particularly for Mr. Trump. Just look at the political map, folks. So, if he cannot carry Florida, now we can go from a close Clinton victory to a comfortable Clinton victory to a rout. Trump, I sincerely believe this. See, and notice the timing of it. Why did it, and my friend said, well, why is it coming out now? Why did that news come out now? Here's why, folks. 2 reasons why. Number one, Trump made the mistake some months and weeks ago, because he's been constantly doing it, bad-mouthing the media. That's a no-no. You cannot fight the media. I don't care what profession you're in, where you deal with the media always wins. Always know that. Okay, I have a simple rule I always say, especially to athletes. When they get too personal or close to the media is not your friend. The media is there to do a job. And do a job they sometimes will. Now, here's why Trump lasted as long as he did to begin with. See, everyone knows he's bad for the country. He's bad for the presidency, and he's bad for the country. But he is a ratings darling. And that's why the media loves him. Because why? He draws eyeballs. Headsets, hearing. Whether he's on the radio or whether he's on the TV. He draws eyeballs. And ratings matter in the media business. Okay? It matters, folks. Because that's how they make their money. So it matters. So they will tolerate you for as long as possible, as long as you're bringing in the ratings. But in politics, it is not wise. It's not wise regardless of what profession we're talking about, but we're talking about politics here. It's not wise to criticize the media. Because though they may help you, They could also hurt you. And this is one of the reasons how they can do it. They hit you with a bomb like this. Boom. Now you answer. Here's the second problem. It's the timing of this. Why now? We're now in October. This came out on Thursday. This news that broke on Thursday. This is what you call in politics, and parties and the media is known for doing this when they want to destroy a candidate. It's called the October surprise. In this case, you could call it the late September / October surprise or the October surprise. Doesn't matter. But they come out with news that hits in around October, where it makes it impossible for the candidate who the news is negative against to recover. Why do you think? See, remember, let's go back to 2008 when Obama was running against Hillary Clinton and that hotly contested Democratic primaries. The Clintons ultimately did Obama a favor, and let me explain to you why. Because they were sitting on some film. They were sitting on some film. And you can best believe if they were sitting on it, so were the Republicans, because I'm certain the Republicans had it. But here's what happened. Hillary Clinton saw her presidency or her candidacy to become president in danger, because in order to become the general election candidate, you got to first win the primaries. So she saw that Obama was kicking her butt in the primaries. So she thought the way to stop him was to release the Jeremiah Wright video. And anybody not familiar with Jeremiah Wright, if you're not following politics, he was the former pastor of Barack Obama, then Senator Barack Obama. Okay? And he made some bombastic statements like "goddamn America," the KKK and all that other stuff, right? The Republicans were sitting on that video. The Republicans wasn't going to release that video when it was released. It was released in around March or April of 2008. Okay? Because what she tried to do was to use that to derail his candidacy. The Republicans was going to wait until October to release that video. Okay? They was going to wait because that makes political sense. You wait until as late as possible, usually around October, late September, early October, to release it. Now the candidate's going to spend the next 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a whole month, having to defend himself. And if you're defending, you're not on the attack. If you're defending, you're losing in politics. Just know that. That's the rule in politics. If you're defending, you're losing. Had that video came out in October, America might have looked at Obama differently. Because remember, he's running as the first African American for this position. So it could have set Obama back. Had that video been released in October, and you can best believe it would have. Had Hillary not ran it back in March or April of that same year. So it gave Obama time to recover. He was able to recover, and he goes on and he wins the See, that's what they call the October surprise. Well, she threw it out in March, April. Okay? Because the Republicans was going to release it later on, in October. That's how that works. And that's how the media works. They wait until about a month or so before the election, and then they hit you with the video. Now you're going to spend weeks having to defend it. And if you're defending it, what are you not talking about? The key issues are what you need, your messages to the people. So this helps usually cause that candidate to lose. Both parties are guilty of this, and the media is guilty of this. It wouldn't shock me if someone from the Democratic Party knew about this and leaked it to Mr. Eisenwell. It wouldn't shock me if someone from the Democratic Party knew about this video and slipped it to Mr. Eisenwell, and released it around October. This is a political game, folks, and this is how they ruin you. Because by releasing that video now, it makes it really almost impossible for Trump to clean this up. Where had they released it earlier in the year, He might have survived it because it would have given him time. Now you don't have time because he's got to prepare for the next debate, and then he's got to answer to this. Then he's got to answer for Alicia Machado. Okay? Now, I think purposely he came out on Friday with that tweet to try to keep this from getting in the news. Keep this news suppressed about the Cuba U.S. embargo agreement. I believe they allowed him to put that tweet out about Alicia Machado basically being a slut, because that's what they are calling her, by basically performing in a porno video. That's what they're claiming, even though there's no proof to that, but we know Trump has been in one. But regardless, the whole point is I believe they did that purposely to keep the suppress, which I don't blame them, because that's, and thinking about it in retrospect, that's probably a smart thing. Now, what they're praying for is that Clinton doesn't bring it up. What they're praying for is that Clinton, when she goes down to Florida, she'll talk about Alicia Machado, but she will not talk about Trump breaking that U.S. embargo agreement. Now, some people will say, well, why would Trump do that? That makes no sense, or it makes perfect sense for him to try to break that agreement. Well, but at the time, think about put yourself in Trump's position. Think about it from a business standpoint. And I understand Trump's thinking. It just backfired, but I understand his thinking. Because, see, the word was that Clinton was thinking about breaking that U.S.-Cuba embargo agreement, so that would allow now U.S. businesses to do business in Cuba. Okay? So what Trump was thinking, let me be the first in Cuba. Because as a business company and stuff, and businessman, you kind of want to be the first. Because for number one, bragging rights, and number two, you set the market. You already now have an advantage over your competitors. Anybody else trying to come in there. So I understand Trump's thinking. The only problem and why it backfired is Clinton did not break or got rid of the agreement. Clinton didn't give the okay, that okay is now okay for the U.S. companies to do business in Cuba. Obama has now given that okay. Why do you think Trump is pissed with Obama? Like, really? When I really needed it, which was back in 1998, I couldn't get that agreement because now I could have, did it on the slide and no one would have been the wiser. Okay? I could have, but now you have relations with Cuba. When it doesn't help Trump, it's not to Trump's benefit. That's why you saw Trump go after Obama about this agreement with Cuba. Because he was hoping that Bill Clinton did that. Because had Bill Clinton did that, then he would have gotten away with this and gotten away with it cleanly. Okay? And in all honesty, Trump would have looked smart. But it backfired because, unfortunately for him, Bill Clinton never got rid of that agreement. So it was always the case that you can't spend a dime in Cuba. And the fact that his company, and they got the receipts proving it, did business in Cuba is a problem. Or spent money in Cuba is a problem. And that's what, in my opinion, effectively ended his presidency. Because the people they will forgive an honest mistake. They will even forgive a lie. But here's what they will not forgive. People will not forgive, and that's called deceit. People are not very forgiving when it comes to deceit, because deceit is malicious. Here you're telling these Cubans about how their leader in Cuba is a bad man, a murderer, a boom, 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 but yet secretly you was trying to do business with the same man. That's a major, major problem. Why do you think Marco Rubio, who has blatantly and painfully and sickly has endorsed Donald Trump, said Trump has to answer for this because this is a big problem. And had the Republican Party knew about this, It is highly likely that they would have allowed Trump to be their nominee. But then again, they punked out like the way the Democrats always punked out. They didn't stand up. But good for Hillary Clinton, they didn't. She got the right opponent at the right time. And so a lot of people is going to probably point back to the debate that ended Trump's candidacy when it's all said and done with. Come November 9th, they'll probably say it was that first debate. Oh, no, my friend. Because, see, him breaking that embargo agreement may not hurt him around the rest of the country, but it kills him in Florida. And I think now you can take Florida off the map for him. And if my theory is right on that, and those Cuban Americans don't come out for him in large numbers, which now I have a hard time believing that they will, his candidacy is effectively over, folks. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Political Talk Show. Have a good weekend.